Well, the Hollywood boys put on a blockbuster performance yesterday over at the racecourse ground. It did finish Wrexham 5, visitors Maidstone nil. And of course, looking back at the game straight after, not really too much to write home about. Unfortunately for the Stones, it was a pretty dismal performance in a lot of key areas, which really did benefit us last season. But this time round, we've been caught out by the big boys. Of course, we've got a lot of key figures in the squad missing at the moment, but for me, there's still things that we could have done to make that loss a little bit easier on the fans and, of course, the squad and management team. Looking at that game yesterday, before it, I was thinking we could have an opportunity here to maybe take advantage of a slow start for Wrexham. Not the case. They turned up, put in a 10 out of 10 performance, really. They were slow at times just because they didn't really get out of second gear, and they still played us off the park in significant portions of the game. So for me, this video is going to be a very long one. So just a heads up before we get into it. Very long video coming, and I'm going to be taking a look at the Wrexham game, what we can learn from it, and then giving my thoughts and opinions based off analysis, talking to many different fans. I've spoken to probably a dozen different fans after every single game this season, getting their thoughts and opinions on each game. So I'm coming into it with quite a broad spectrum of ideas and thoughts towards it, and give my thoughts on the areas of the pitch more so than the individuals. Unfortunately, individuals will be roped into it just because they're being played out of position, which is something I'll highlight as a problem area throughout this video. But like I say, it's going to be a very long one, looking at Wrexham and then looking at analysis and where we can build on going ahead throughout the rest of the season, and hopefully improve this squad to secure a easy survival in the National League. But nothing's ever easy, so let's see how I think we can put something together to give us the best chance of doing so. Let's now take a look into what I thought were some of the biggest points contributing to that loss yesterday. And the first thing that I want to look at is set pieces. We did concede 3 goals from set pieces yesterday, 2 from corners, and then we conceded, of course, the penalty as well. So giving away penalties is something that teams really don't want to do, and when you've got the intricate players that Wrexham have got, sometimes that is you can't really help that. Sometimes these players just do win penalties in the box, and as we saw against Dawkins, sometimes they can be a little bit softer. But for me, silly penalties is something we really need to rule out if we're going to look to survive and push on in this division. Giving away a handball like we did yesterday, Jack Cooley, I think, had his arm out like that and it come off his hands. So it's just a bit silly. Like, it was a penalty for me. Maybe looking back at it, it'll be a different story. But just not lunging in, making the right challenges at the right times. This will allow us to just shore up the defence a little bit more, usher players outside and close down chances without giving the referee an opportunity to give a foul away. And then, of course, corners. Corners is something that we didn't really suffer with too much last season. Joe Alol, George Fowler, Ben Williams, these players, Michael Phillips in the team, even Luke, slightly taller player, all contribute to helping clear the lines from corners defensively. But yesterday it was just shambolic. It was absolutely shambolic. At the front post we got done for what I now believe has been marked down as an own goal, but a diving header in from Jordan Davis, free at the near post in the 6-yard box, not picked up, really poor, conceding another goal. And then, of course, that first goal, I think it was, Mullins scored that header at the back post, but I believe a corner came in towards the back post and then it was headed back across to the then back post, so the near post from the corner, and nobody contesting it. That's 2 phases of play there in which Maidstone have not won the ball. It's got to be better. It really has got to be better. Of course, we're missing some big players from this team. We've lost Michael Phillips as well, who did contribute to that physical presence in the box. But that's still no excuse. Jack Cooley, he's a big guy. Joe Alol, a big guy. And I know Ollie Palmer, Paul Mullin, they had a lot of big players, just Hayden as well, in and around the box. But there's no excuse. You've got to win these defensive headers. And Hakan said yesterday, it's an uncharacteristic performance from us. And I think so. I do think so. I don't think we can read too much into it, but there are definitely some key figures there that we do need to take a look at to try and assess this game. And like I said, what we can take away from it, building into slightly weaker opposition in this league. Of course, there's not going to be any easy games. That's just how the National League is for a newly promoted side. However, like I say, these set pieces defensively definitely need improvement. Offensively as well. At times, I can't remember the last time we scored a free kick. I can't remember the last time we particularly trolled a goalkeeper with a free kick. We've got Liam Vincent in the side now, who has got a fantastic left foot. He's in the short-term period. Get him in the side. He's good at set pieces. Portsmouth fans were saying when he left them to come to us on loan, that is what he's good at: set pieces, left foot delivery, good left foot shot from that fullback position. So we need to make use of that, take advantage of it, even if it is just for a couple of weeks. If we can get something out of him for a couple of weeks that he's got left in the squad, then why wouldn't you? So, for me, just deliveries, not brilliant. Corners have not been brilliant for a while either. Struggling to be the first man at times. Overhitting a couple sometimes. Towards the edge of the box every now and then, which, there's not much consistency there. It doesn't seem like we've really got someone to aim for when we have got these bigger players that can win headers, through a lull. As I mentioned already, Cooley. These are players capable of winning a header in the box. Despite the size of Wrexham, of course, I'm not just looking at Wrexham here, but these are some of the points from yesterday that I want to look at in total that I've seen so far this season. Our set pieces have just not been very efficient. So that's something for me to look at. And the fullbacks as well is probably the main problem for me in the squad right now. The fullback problem that we've got with just one player missing in Binnon Williams has caused chaos throughout this team, really disorganisation at the back, having to play, in my opinion, best centre-back partner out at right-back in George Fowler. George Fowler, for me, no-brainer there, our two best centre-backs. Cooley has got good traits in him, but at the moment he needs to iron out those mistakes that we've been seeing throughout this season so far. He's escaped with a lot of them. He's got away quite a few times with a lot of them, but they could prove very costly in the future. Of course, that pass back header down to Seager against Dorkin cost us a goal, but the game has already gone by that point. But in the future these might cost us vital points. So for me, Fruelol Fowler have to be the centre back partnership, and we just can't be playing centre backs at right back. George Fowler, great player, love him to bits. I think he's fantastic for us last season, so underrated. But his fullback ability is just not quite there. He does not get forward very confidently. His ball delivery is not brilliant either. He does not overlap as successfully as Gavin Hoyt did playing there last season. So for me, get Gavin back over on the right and at least have a very strong side on one side, because for me that right-hand side has not looked good this season. The left-hand side, of course, where Gavin's been playing, I rate Gavin so highly as a defender. He can play anywhere along that back line. But again, going forward, he's very, very right-footed, and it's so easy to predict what he's going to do as someone who isn't the fastest, isn't the most technical, but can get forward and deliver a ball in. He can only really do it on his right foot. So every time he goes forward down the left-hand side, he's having to cut back in, either find someone else or try and deliver an in-swinging ball with his right foot, which is very easy to predict for opposition players, especially at National League level. We might have got away with it last year, but this time around, not a chance. So for me, we've got Liam Vincent on loan. He hasn't looked terrible. He's played 90 minutes now, I think. Half game against Wrexham, half game against Altrincham. Against Altrincham, I didn't think he was terrible. He did get dragged out a little bit, but he was on his own out there for the Altrincham goal. And that was only the first phase of play. There was nobody on the back post to defend the ball back across. So, again, not too much to put on blame of him there yesterday. He did get caught out as soon as he came on against Wrexham, but he quickly made up for it. It didn't cost us anything. So hopefully we can see him again. Just having a natural fullback who can get a ball in the box could prove quite useful at the weekend versus Torquay and going forward throughout the season. We are going to need someone else in as well, because Rafe Brown, I think they've just, in the nice way possible, given up on him, really, in terms of his fitness. There's just no end in sight as to when his injury problems are going to stop. And I think he's a fantastic player. I think he could be really, really useful for us if fit. I'd have no problem with him playing left back or centre back. But unfortunately, those fitness concerns are just way too concerning, really. So we do need to replace Vincent for when his loan ends in the next week or two. Hopefully we can get the most out of him before he goes back. But Binnon Williams apparently isn't going to be back for at least 6 to 8 weeks, which is huge for us. If we carry on with this disjointed team at the back, not settling down, not having that consistency for another 2 months, I really fear for the worst for this Maidstone team. And it's once you get in that rut, once you get in that kind of crevice of despair and despondency around the squad and the fan base, if you're losing 4 or 5 games in a row or something like that, just because this situation has not been sorted, then that's going to cause massive problems down the line. So for me, a left back has to come in, even if it's for like a 3-month loan, or we sign someone permanently who can play there as a very solid backup, and then Binnon Williams can come back in towards the Christmas period, November time, hopefully October, something like that. But yeah, that has to be sorted for me, the fullback position. Another thing is the goalkeeper. Of course, there's been a lot of criticism of Yusuf Mersin lately. Someone said that, how can you play a goalkeeper who's conceded 9 goals in 2 games? And that's a very valid point. But, how can you play a back 4 that's conceded 9 goals in 2 games? Yusuf Mersin has made some incredible saves against Dorking, some incredible saves versus Wrexham as well. And we really could have conceded a lot more than 9 goals. I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people, they haven't been able to make a lot of these games. And I don't think Tom Haddle would have been able to save many of those opportunities, if any of those opportunities either. So, for me, shot stopping is not a problem with Mersin, but I have got a couple of criticisms of him in terms of his confidence when it comes to communicating with his back line. He is very quiet and often lets a ball fly across the 6-yard box. A couple times against Wrexham yesterday, the ball was no more than a yard or 2 in front of him coming across the box, and he did not step out to claim it, and that is very dangerous for me. I really rate his ability to come off his line and meet someone, sweeping. Fantastic. That saves us a lot of opportunities, and really, stopped us losing 8-0 maybe yesterday. But in terms of his communication and his organisation, that needs to improve. It has to improve. I mean, the thing is, if he had all these traits, he wouldn't be a National League goalkeeper, because he would be a total package. But, minor improvements could make a big difference for us. Also, his kicking at times, I didn't think it was actually too bad yesterday against Wrexham, but of course, throughout the season so far, it has not been good at all. So again, hopefully improvements can be made. I wouldn't be against giving Tom Hadler a run out just to tell Mersin that these things have to be improved on. More than happy to have you back in the team once it's sorted, but we just need familiarity, I think, at the back, as it's so disjointed. If we get someone who we're familiar with from last season in there and Tom Hadler, we could really benefit from that as well. And then another point I want to make is the midfield. No Sam Corn, huge loss. 3rd highest goal scorer last season, arguably our best midfielder last season. Of course, Regan Booty is closely contested in that midfield, star role. But before the season started, I said that the midfield was our strongest point in the team. I was a little bit concerned about our attack, a little bit concerned about our defence at times due to the numbers situation. But midfield was something I was certain was going to, win us games in this division, and I don't think we've won a single midfield battle so far this season. I've been to every game, I've commentated 2 of them, I've analysed them after each game, I've spoken to dozens of people after every game, and everyone has said the same thing. There's a couple people who've backed that in terms of we have performed well in the midfield at times, but when it comes to a full 90 minutes, we have not dominated a midfield at all this season, and it's not been disjointed, really. We've had the players there who have been brought in. Henry Wood, Dom Odesanya, Regan Booty, Sam Corn were all available for the first 3 games of the season, and all featured in the first 3 games of the season, in different games, of course. But At no time have we looked solid in breaking up the play, in winning the ball back, in building out from the back to the midfield, in collecting the ball and then offloading it forward. The transition doesn't look brilliant at times. We've been sloppy in the midfield. Regan Booty's having to play a slightly different role to last season if Henry Woods isn't playing in that defensive midfield spot. And Henry Woods, for me, was not brought in to be a defensive midfielder, or at least he shouldn't have been brought in to do that. That's not what he does. He is what I've kind of coined this term during the week, talking to a few people. He's an ankle biter. He's someone who's just there to niggle at players. He's Sam Corn, Regan Booty, very loosely tied together. He can play a pass every now and then. He needs space to thrive, and he's not, he can just niggle at players, but he's not there to be that ball winning midfielder. He's not there to set up every attack we go on. He is a system player for me. I may be wrong. Other people's opinions will differ, of course, but for me, that is what he does. And I spent a lot of time watching his performances last season, and of course it was Dover, but he can perform when given that opportunity to do so, but he can't be put in a role that he's not familiar with in terms of being this ball winner or being this, heavily reliant upon chance creator or this finisher. That's just not what he does. And, like I say, maybe he's not good enough, maybe it is, but, he's someone to help tick the team over, and he is very good at it. We saw against Wrexham, I'll put the poll here that I put on Twitter, a little bit comical in terms of how I structured it, but you can see the results there. And out of the 3 players I did list, he was voted man of the match. He was the only person for me who didn't really put a foot wrong. He wasn't excellent. Nobody was excellent. He was, barely good in the nicest way possible, but he did show some aspects of a decent performance. Played some fantastic balls, one especially out to Rory Deacon, out on the left for Maidstone. A few interceptions, challenges in there as well, which he did manage to help break the play up. So there's something there, but for me, we need a massive ball winner. We need height and we need physicality in the midfield. The National League has got some absolute monsters in it in terms of their height, their power, their speed, and we have got a very, very short team, really, in the grand scheme of things. So a defensive midfielder with height, I don't know who this player is, but that's not my job to highlight that kind of person. We've got people in place to find those players, but for me, we need height and physicality in a defensive midfield role to replace Michael Phillips, because as I said in another video, sometimes people would complain that he was limited in what he offered to this team, but what he did offer was speciality in that defensive midfield role, so we need that replaced very, very quickly. Another thing that I want to mention in terms of the attack this time is that there doesn't seem to be much chemistry there. We are playing with a slightly different front three that we had last season, of course, no Luque, but we are playing with 3 players very regularly who should know each other, Deacon, Barham, Christy Patterson, but we're seeing Deacon now on the left, and that does cause some confusion, I think, sometimes as we look for that out ball. Christy's usually running away, Deacon's usually coming short, which means that now down the right-hand side, we're looking to play the ball short, waiting for Deacon to be there, but Christy's gone long, and Barham, yesterday, just completely ushered out of the game, didn't get a whiff of the ball, really. So yeah, it's just, for me, something that we do need to work on in terms of this chemistry. We need to try and get players playing in their regular position. It might not even be their best. I don't know what the players' best or favourite positions to play in are, but we need that regularity, we need that familiarity to help try and just make the play a little bit more fluid. Hopefully that can create a few more opportunities in the upcoming season, but I'm not entirely sure. And then we did see a 3-5-2 deployed yesterday in the second half. Through a lull coming off at half time. Liam Vincent coming on, playing on that sort of left wing back sort of role, trying to match what Wrexham were doing. And I mean, it kind of worked. We only conceded 2 goals instead of 3 compared to the first half, but not really. Wrexham sat back off us, let us just play a little bit more, and they still scored 2 goals. So yeah, I don't think any formation, any fitness, any players coming back in would have won us that game yesterday. If you want to get a result against Wrexham, you need to have a 9 or 10 out of 10 game. They need to have a 3 or 4 out of 10 game. And yesterday, they had a 9 or a 10. We had a maybe 5 or a 6. We didn't look too bad at times, but that golfing quality is just astronomical. It's just really, really massive, and nothing we could have done could have won us that game because Wrexham turned up. So in the grand scheme of things, don't look too much into it. again, I know this video is more about, a slight review of the Wrexham game, but addressing concerns ahead of the rest of the season. But yeah, there is some benefits to the game in terms of what we could have learned. I did run a poll on the Facebook supporters group. If you're not part of it, Maidstone Facebook supporters group, look it up. There's a poll here in which I asked, how many points do you think we should have got from the first 4 games? Looking at the teams we played, looking at the squad situation, and as you can see by the results of the poll, the majority of the people do feel that 4 to 6 points is about where we should be. We're currently on 4 points, so we're in that kind of bracket of most people's expectations. Again, I don't think the points is necessarily a bad thing so far, but for me, just the manner in how we've conducted ourselves in a lot of these games has been really poor, and I think that's a lot of the concerns that some people do have. I did have a bit of a debate with someone on Twitter last night, getting annoyed at me for accepting mediocrity, and originally I thought he was kind of talking about the players and, I'm backing bad players, but that's not really what he's talking about. It took me a while to see that, and I'll hold my hands up. It took me a little while to see some sense in that debate. I think it was a bit both sides, but, I will hold my hands up. And he did say that, accepting the manner of defeat, the performance people are putting in. And I do agree with that. We can't go to Wrexham and lose 5-0 by not try. Like, if we tried 110% yesterday and still lost 5-0, so be it. But I don't think we did. Hakan don't think we did. A lot of the fans don't really think we did. So yeah, I do see sense in that. I do agree with that to a certain degree. But again, brighter spells looking forward. As I said, a few fans are quite the majority of fans, according to the poll, do agree that 4 to 6 points is where we should be at the moment. We are within that bracket, so thumbs up there. Henry Woods did make a bit of a comeback, of course, from that poll that I showed you earlier. After the Dorking game, got a lot of heat from some of the fans, and somewhat justifiably so. It wasn't his best performance, but hopefully with that Wrexham game, being a little bit of a sparkle in that team, nothing fantastic, but just a bit of fight, a bit of an idea in terms of building things going forward. Hopefully he's kind of won a couple people back over with that performance. It's tough. It is really tough. So hopefully we can see something better from him coming forward, building on that. And then, of course, something I want to end on is Hakan Hayretin. If you haven't seen his post-match interview, I'll link it in the description. But he did mention in this clip...
It's going to be a big week ahead for the home game next week against Dorking. Like I say, they're probably going to need a bigger performance at least to the supporters, aren't they?
If they're selected, if I get my way, I'll bring some players in next week.
That he is not happy with the squad in the slightest by the looks of it. I mean, go and watch the full interview. His demeanour is very much not too pleased, and I don't blame him in the slightest. That's not the ethos that he runs a club with. This is not the way that he envisages his teams performing. If you're going to lose well, at least. So yeah, hopefully we're going to see a couple signings coming in before the Torquay game this coming weekend. We've got a couple good fixtures coming up where we could pick up some points. For me, in terms of transfers, the transfer ongoings so far have been underwhelming. When they come in, I was dubious of some. Of course, unproven at this level in many quantities. I don't think it was the summer that Hakan, Terry, the board, etc. would have been hoping for. In terms of their incomings, there were definitely targets that were missed out on. David Smith, of course, missed out on to Bromley. We won't go into that again. But there was a video of Hakan towards the start of the season where he's got a little sheet, taps it on the table, and on the back of that sheet is a bunch of players that he's looking at, names of players that he's looking at there. So there's many of them players who have not signed for the club, of course. So maybe they're potentially missed out, or maybe he decided they weren't good enough. But for me, the incomings have been slightly underwhelming. Not really. None of them have hit the ground running. I think it's fair to say each have got their bedding in issues at the moment. The best for me was Solwandro Smith, but unfortunately it's not looking too prosperous for him at the moment in terms of his return to the pitch. So hopefully we're going to see a couple good quality players who can come in, hit the ground running in two key areas for me, a left back and a defensive midfielder. I think if we can get two decent players, just decent players, people who can do that position well, just do a job for us, carry us through this poor spell in terms of injuries like that. That's what I mean by poor in terms of their squad fitness and stuff. We could be all right. Just ride out a couple of losses, pick up some good points in the coming weeks and build on from there once people start returning from injury. So that is pretty much all I'm going to have to say for this video. I understand it's been an incredibly long one, but as I said, it's kind of two videos merged into one. I did consider doing two videos, a Wrexham review and a review kind of the season and how we can build on from it, but I did feel that they would overlap too much to kind of put two videos in, if that makes sense. So I have made sure that I've not really repeated myself in this video. I've just kind of spoken about each point as I've moved along, goalkeeper, defence, fullbacks, etc. Try not to repeat myself, just trying to get it all in. As I say, just saves, keeps it all in one place for you, makes it a bit easier for me to get up as one video rather than two, and it stops you feeling a bit shortchanged if you watch one video where I talk about all these problems with Wrexham and then watch another video where I talk about all these problems from Wrexham and other games in which we can then build on. So hopefully it kind of works. I hope you did enjoy this video, and of course if you did, do like, subscribe, do comment down below how you think the squad can improve. What are the really essential areas around the field that we need to improve on in terms of maybe just tactical switch or recruitment, something like that. Just let me know down below and hopefully we can pick up some points at the weekend. So thank you everyone for watching and I'll catch you next time.